In 1945, as Soviet tanks rolled into Berlin, the centuries-old House of Hessen looked at their sprawling estate and realized they had less than 24 hours before everything they owned was seized, destroyed, or looted. They didn't panic. Instead, they buried a massive, iron-bound chest deep beneath the floorboards of a wine cellar. Inside? Millions of dollars in diamonds, rubies, and Queen Victoria's personal letters. When the American army later occupied the castle, the treasure vanished. It kicked off a frantic, multi-million-dollar international heist investigation that reached the highest levels of the Pentagon. But here is the truly terrifying part. This wasn't an act of desperation. It was a calculated formula. For the last 1,000 years, while empires crumbled, currencies turned to ash, and entire civilizations were wiped off the map, a tiny, hyper-elite group of families didn't just survive the chaos, they actually got richer. How do the ultra-wealthy insulate their bloodlines from the end of the world? We are taught that no empire lasts forever. But there is a hidden financial blueprint, a secret, unbroken mechanism passed down through the shadows of history that has kept the exact same families in power for 30 generations. And it all traces back to a single, radical decision made during the darkest crisis humanity has ever faced. A decision that changed the value of human life forever. To understand how they did it, we have to travel back to the year 1348. The Black Death is tearing through Europe. In less than 2 years, 1/3 of the continent's population is dead. Imagine the sheer economic apocalypse. Entire villages are ghost towns. Fields are rotting. The feudal system, the absolute bedrock of global wealth, where lords owned the land and peasants worked it for free, and shattered overnight. For the ruling aristocracy, this wasn't just a health crisis, it was the total extinction of their business model. With no peasants left alive to farm, land values plummeted to zero. The rich were suddenly holding massive portfolios of completely worthless dirt. But amid the piles of bodies and burning cities, a few noble families in Florence and London noticed something strange. While the price of land was collapsing, the price of something else was skyrocketing. They realized that survivors of the plague were demanding astronomical wages just to work. Labor was suddenly a premium commodity. If the elites fought this change, they would face peasant revolts and total ruin. So, they made a pivot. A move so cunning it birthed the modern financial world, allowing a select few to quietly weaponize the plague to lock down their wealth for the next 700 years. Instead of hoarding land, these families did something revolutionary. They liquidated their estates and poured their wealth into liquid, untraceable assets. They invented merchant banking. Families like the Medici in Italy and the Fuggers in Germany stopped relying on kings and crops. They realized that governments rise and fall, but debt is eternal. They began financing the very wars that were destroying their rivals. If a king won a war, the bankers took a massive cut of the new territory. If the king lost, the bankers already held the keys to the kingdom's silver mines as collateral. They had built a system where they literally could not lose. By the 1600s, this evolved into the ultimate weapon of wealth preservation, the dynastic trust. In plain English, these families legally separated their names from their money. They created entities that owned everything, but were controlled by no one person. If a rogue heir gambled away a fortune, or if a tyrant king tried to execute a duke and seize his assets, the law protected the money. The family didn't own the wealth owned the family. For 3 centuries, this formula worked flawlessly. Wealth grew exponentially, sheltered in private banks, untouchable by plagues, revolutions, or corrupt monarchs. The elites had successfully engineered an immortal system. Until the morning of July 14, 1789. The French Revolution didn't just change politics, it completely broke the rules of money. Suddenly, having a dynastic trust didn't matter if your head was in a basket. The angry, starving masses didn't care about legal loopholes or offshore gold reserves. They burned the bank ledgers. They seized the palaces. They hunted down anyone with a noble surname. For the first time in history, the ultra-wealthy faced an enemy they couldn't bribe, sue, or outweight: absolute, chaotic equality. Within months, wealth that had been painstakingly preserved since the Middle Ages vanished into thin air. The old families of continental Europe realized their fatal mistake: their wealth was too visible. It was too tied to their geographic bloodlines. If they wanted to survive this new world of furious democracy and global warfare, they needed to become ghosts. They needed a way to move billions of dollars across borders at the speed of light, without a single government noticing. And that's when a young man from a cramped ghetto in Frankfurt stepped out of the shadows with a brilliant, dangerous solution. His name was Meyer Amschel Rothschild. He looked at the chaos of the Napoleonic Wars and saw the ultimate business opportunity. He placed his 5 sons in 5 strategic financial hubs across Europe. During the plague, the elite learned to value labor over land. Now, the Rothschilds realized the ultimate commodity wasn't labor, it was information. They built a private, ultra-fast courier network of riders, boats, and carrier pigeons that beat the official government mail by days. During the Battle of Waterloo, the Rothschilds knew Napoleon had lost a full day before the British government did. While the London stock market panic sold, thinking Britain was doomed, the Rothschilds quietly bought up the entire British economy for pennies on the dollar. But as the 20th century dawned, the crisis escalated to a horrific scale. 2 world wars and the rise of communism did what the French Revolution started: they brought total destruction to private fortunes. In Russia, the Romanovs were eliminated. In Germany, hyperinflation turned billions of marks into kindling. The elites had to evolve again. They couldn't just rely on quick information anymore. The state had become too powerful, armed with income taxes, asset seizures, and digital tracking. To survive the modern era, the dynasties had to build a literal parallel universe. This brings us back to our mega open loop. How do these families keep winning when the world burns? How did the House of Hessen, despite losing their treasure in 1945, still retain vast fortunes today? The answer lies in the creation of the global offshore shadow system, a borderless financial labyrinth built by the elite, for the elite. When a modern global catastrophe hits, whether it's the 2008 financial crash, the pandemics of the 2020s, or skyrocketing inflation, your wealth suffers because it sits in a traditional bank account tied to your country's economy. The dynastic wealth of the world does not exist in any one country. Through a brilliant legal trick known as the double Irish or the Dutch sandwich, wealth is fractured into thousands of digital pieces. A family's asset is owned by a shell company in the Cayman Islands, which is owned by a trust in Liechtenstein, which leases the intellectual property to a holding company in Delaware. It is a legal ghost machine. When a government tries to tax them, there is nothing to tax. When a war destroys a city, their assets are already safely converted into sovereign debt, gold vaults buried beneath Swiss mountains, and premium global real estate held under anonymous corporate names. They don't try to stop the chaos. They have mapped the physics of disaster. They know that every time a system collapses, the government prints money to fix it, which devalues the currency of the masses while inflating the value of the hard assets the elites already own. They don't just survive catastrophes, catastrophes are the very engine that drives their growth. The iron-bound chest buried by the House of Hessen in 1945 was eventually recovered after a massive investigation, but the real treasure was never the physical diamonds. It was the blueprint. For 1,000 years, the rules of the game have stayed exactly the same. The names of the crises change from the bubonic plague to hyperinflation to modern economic shifts, but the strategy remains flawless: stay invisible, stay liquid, and stay borderless. While the rest of the world scrambles to survive the next major crisis, the world's oldest dynasties are simply waiting for the dust to settle, ready to buy up the pieces. Understanding how this hidden architecture works is the first step to navigating the volatile economic future we are all walking into. We dive deep into these hidden forces shaping our world every single week. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications to join us for the next investigation.